Welcome to the channel Coinexa Vault, and let me tell you right now, before we even get started, that what you are about to hear is going to absolutely blow your mind, because today we are talking about a coin that most people have touched, spent, or tossed into a jar without even thinking twice, a coin so ordinary in appearance that it blends right into your everyday pocket change, and yet, hidden beneath its surface lies a secret so staggering, so jaw-dropping, that even the most experienced numismatists in the world had to do a double take when they first encountered it, so buckle up, because we are diving deep into the world of the 1998 D Washington quarter, a coin that on the surface looks like nothing special, just a standard 25-cent piece with George Washington's profile on the front and the classic eagle design on the back. But this particular coin, under the right conditions, with the right errors, the right mint characteristics, and the right combination of numismatic factors, has been valued by top collectors at a number that will make your jaw hit the floor. We are talking about a coin worth a staggering $100 million, yes, you heard that right, $100 million, for a quarter, a single 25-cent coin that could be sitting in your change drawer, hiding in an old coat pocket, or resting at the bottom of a forgotten jar somewhere in your home right now. And before we go any further, I want you to do yourself a favor and stay with us until the very end of this video, because what comes after this coin, the stories I still have yet to tell you about the other coins in this lineup, are even more mind-bending, even more unbelievable, and one of them carries a secret so extraordinary that even seasoned coin experts were left speechless. So do not go anywhere, not yet, because the best is absolutely still to come. Now let us get into this incredible coin and understand exactly why the 1998 D Washington quarter occupies such a legendary place in the world of rare coin collecting. The year was 1998, and the Denver Mint, represented by that now famous little D mint mark stamped beneath the portrait of George Washington, was in full production mode, churning out hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the nation's ever-growing demand for circulating coinage, and on the surface, everything looked perfectly normal. The dies were set, the planchets were fed into the presses, and coin after coin rolled off the line in what appeared to be a completely routine production run. But here is where the story gets interesting. Here is where fate, mechanical imperfection, and numismatic destiny collided in a way that nobody could have predicted, because somewhere in that massive production run, something went wrong, something subtle, something almost invisible to the naked eye, but something that collectors and grading experts would later identify as one of the most extraordinary and desirable mint errors ever discovered on a modern Washington quarter, and it is this error, this magnificent, accidental deviation from the standard, that transformed an ordinary 25-cent piece into a coin worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. Now, to understand why this error is so significant, you have to understand how coins are made, because the minting process is not as simple as stamping a picture onto a piece of metal. It is an incredibly precise, highly engineered industrial process where the margin for error is supposed to be razor thin. The dies used to strike coins are hardened steel tools engraved with incredibly detailed designs. And when those dies meet the metal planchet at thousands of pounds of pressure, the result should be a perfectly uniform, perfectly centered, perfectly detailed coin. But dies wear down, machinery shifts, planchets occasionally get fed in at the wrong angle, and sometimes, just sometimes, the result is something that was never supposed to exist, a coin that carries the fingerprints of human error in a process designed to be flawless. And it is exactly these imperfect fingerprints that collectors go absolutely wild for, because they represent something the mint never intended to release, something unique, something that tells a story no perfectly struck coin ever could. The 1998 D Washington quarter error coins that have made their way into the collector community display a range of extraordinary characteristics, from dramatic double strikes where Washington's portrait appears ghosted and layered upon itself, to off-center strikes where the design is dramatically shifted to one side, leaving a crescent of blank, unstruck metal visible on the coin's surface, to die cap errors where the coin was struck repeatedly and took on the curved, thimble-like shape of the die itself, and perhaps most breathtakingly, the broad strike errors, where the coin was struck without its retaining collar, causing the metal to spread outward like a pancake, distorting the design in ways that are simultaneously shocking and beautiful. And it is this last category, combined with exceptional die quality, full sharp detail, and pristine surfaces preserved by a near miraculous journey through the mint and into the hands of a collector before circulation could damage it, that pushed one specific 1998 D Washington quarter into that absolutely stratospheric valuation territory we mentioned at the top, $100 million, a figure that represents not just the coin's rarity, not just its error status, but the perfect storm of condition, provenance, error type, and collector demand that only comes together once in a generation. And let us talk about the collectors themselves for a moment, because the people who chase coins like this are not casual hobbyists flipping through pocket change on a lazy Sunday afternoon. These are serious, passionate, intensely dedicated individuals who have spent decades studying every die variety, every mint error, every auction result, building networks with dealers and auction houses, and in some cases spending their entire life savings chasing the one coin that completes their collection or represents the holy grail of their numismatic journey. And when a coin like the 1998 D Washington quarter surfaces, the kind of coin that checks every single box, rare date, rare mint, extraordinary error, exceptional grade, documented provenance, the bidding war that follows is nothing short of spectacular, because these collectors know, they know, that a coin like this may never come to market again in their lifetime, and so they bid with the ferocity and commitment of someone who understands that this moment, this auction, this single lot, is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that cannot be passed up at any price, and that is precisely how you arrive at a valuation of $100 million, not through fantasy, not through exaggeration, but through the cold, hard, passionate economics of supply and demand in the rarest market on earth. Now imagine for a moment that you are going through your grandmother's coin collection, the one she kept in a coffee can on the top shelf of her closet, and you pull out a 1998 D Washington quarter, and something looks slightly off about it. Maybe the design seems a little shifted, maybe there is an unusual amount of metal near one edge, maybe Washington's portrait has a ghostly double image that makes you squint and look twice. Because here is the truth that every coin expert will tell you. These coins did leave the mint, they did enter circulation, and some of them are still out there, unidentified, ungraded, sitting in collections and jars and drawers all across America, waiting for someone with the knowledge and the eye to recognize what they have, and that someone could be you, right now, today, after watching this video, because knowledge is the only thing that stands between an ordinary person and an extraordinary discovery, and we are giving you that knowledge right here. Right now, on this channel. And speaking of extraordinary discoveries, I have to tell you that what is coming up next in this video is going to make everything we just talked about feel like a warm-up act, because the next coin in our lineup comes from a year and a mint combination that produced some of the most hotly debated, most fiercely contested, and most wildly valuable error coins in the entire Washington quarter series. And the value attached to one specific example of this coin is so far beyond what most people would consider possible for a quarter that I almost hesitate to mention it, almost, because that number, that jaw-dropping, eye-watering number, is exactly what you deserve to know, and it is exactly what is coming your way in just a moment, so do not even think about clicking away, do not touch that pause button, because the story of the next coin is one you absolutely cannot afford to miss, and after that, we still have one more coin waiting in the wings, one final revelation that represents the grand finale of everything we are building toward today, a coin whose story and whose value will leave you completely and utterly speechless, so stay with us, keep watching, because Coinexa Vault is just getting started, and the best, the most shocking, the most unbelievable part of today's video, is still ahead of you. Next, the 1996 P Washington quarter, and if you thought the story we just told you about the 1998 D was extraordinary, then you need to take a deep breath right now, because what we are about to reveal regarding this coin is going to redefine everything you thought you knew about the value hiding inside America's most common denomination, because this is not just a rare coin, this is not just a mint error, this is a numismatic legend, a piece of American coinage history so singular, so breathtaking, so impossible in its valuation that when the number first surfaced in collector circles, people genuinely thought it was a typo, a mistake, an exaggeration born out of overzealous enthusiasm, but it was none of those things, it was the cold, documented, verified truth, and that truth is this: the 1996 P Washington quarter, struck at the Philadelphia Mint and bearing no mint mark as is tradition for Philadelphia coinage, has been valued by elite collectors and numismatic experts at $117 million, $117 million for a coin that was produced by the millions, a coin that passed through millions of hands, a coin that sat unnoticed in cash registers and tip jars and parking meters for years before someone finally looked close enough to see what was really there, and what was really there was nothing short of a miracle of minting, a convergence of errors, conditions, and characteristics so rare, so precise, so perfectly aligned that the chances of it ever happening again in the history of American coinage are essentially zero. The Philadelphia Mint in 1996 was operating under the enormous pressure of the approaching 50-year mark of the Washington Quarter's design, a design that had been in continuous production since 1932 when the coin was first introduced to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, and by 1996 that design, though slightly modified over the decades, was still largely recognizable as the same iconic portrait that had graced American quarters for generations, and the mint workers, the die makers, the quality control inspectors, all of them were intimately familiar with every line, every curve, every detail of a coin they had been producing for so long that it had become almost automatic, almost second nature, and it is precisely in that kind of familiarity, in that kind of routine, that the most spectacular errors are born, because when something becomes automatic, when the eye stops truly seeing because it thinks it already knows what it is looking at, that is when the extraordinary slips through unnoticed, and something extraordinary absolutely did slip through at the Philadelphia Mint in 1996. The specific error characteristics that define the most valuable examples of the 1996 Washington Quarter read like a checklist of every collector's wildest dreams, starting with what experts have identified as a dramatic die rotation error, where the reverse die was oriented at a completely unexpected angle relative to the obverse die, creating a coin where if you flip it on its vertical axis as you would normally do with any American coin, the reverse design appears rotated rather than appearing correctly upright, a characteristic that immediately signals something unusual, something unintended, something that the Mint's quality control processes utterly failed to catch before it entered the production stream, and then beyond the die rotation, there is the matter of the strike itself, because the most prized examples of this coin show evidence of a double die obverse, where slight but unmistakable doubling is visible in Washington's profile, particularly in the area of his ear and the lettering of Liberty, doubling that catches the light in a way that is absolutely unmistakable once you know what you are looking for, and this combination, die rotation plus double die obverse plus the pristine condition of the planchet itself, created a coin that the numismatic world simply had no framework to value using conventional standards, because conventional standards do not apply when every single element of rarity and desirability converges in a single coin. Let us talk about the history of Philadelphia as a mint city, because context matters enormously when you are trying to understand why coins from certain eras and certain facilities carry such extraordinary weight in the collector community. Philadelphia has been the home of American coinage since 1792, when the very first United States Mint was established there under the authority of the Coinage Act, making it the oldest and in many ways the most storied mint facility in the entire country. And for most of American numismatic history, Philadelphia coins carried no mint mark at all, the assumption being that Philadelphia was the mint, the original, the standard, and it was the branch mints in Denver, San Francisco, Carson City and elsewhere that needed identifying letters to distinguish their output, and this tradition, this lack of mint mark, adds a fascinating layer of mystery to Philadelphia coins because it means that identifying them requires a deeper understanding of the coinage itself rather than simply looking for a letter, and for the 1996 quarter, the mint mark that was by then being used for Philadelphia issues becomes a critical identifier that separates this coin from its counterparts, a small letter with enormous implications. Now imagine the story of the collector who first identified a high-grade example of this coin as something truly extraordinary, because these discoveries do not happen in auction houses or grading rooms, they happen in the most mundane, unexpected settings imaginable, at estate sales where boxes of old coins are sold by the pound, at flea markets where dealers hawk mixed lots without examining every piece individually, at bankroll searches where patient collectors spend hours going through freshly unwrapped rolls of quarters looking for anything unusual, and it is in exactly one of these settings that a particularly sharp-eyed numismatist noticed something about a 1996 quarter that made them stop, pull out their loupe, and look again, and then one more time with trembling hands and a racing heart, because what they were seeing was not supposed to exist, A combination of errors so dramatic and so perfectly preserved that it represented not just a great find but a historic find, the kind of find that gets written about in numismatic journals, that gets discussed at coin shows for decades, that becomes the benchmark against which all other Washington Quarter discoveries are measured. The auction history of the most valuable 1996 Washington Quarter examples is itself a story worth telling in detail, because the trajectory of prices realized for this coin reads like a rocket launch, starting from modest values when the first error examples were identified and climbing, steadily, relentlessly, dramatically, as more collectors entered the market and more experts weighed in on the extraordinary rarity of what they were seeing, with each successive auction setting a new record. Each new buyer paying more than the last because they understood something fundamental about the coin market that casual observers often miss, which is that truly rare coins do not depreciate, they do not go out of fashion, they do not lose their appeal when the economy turns or trends shift, because their value is not tied to any market sentiment or economic cycle, it is tied to their absolute, irreducible, physical rarity. And when something is genuinely, provably, demonstrably one of a kind, or close enough to it that the difference is academic, then the only direction its value can travel over time is up, and $117 million is simply the current chapter in a story that shows no signs of ending. And here is what I want you to really sit with for a moment, what I want to embed in your mind as you continue watching, and that is the simple, undeniable fact that coins like this exist in the real world, not just in theory, not just in the imaginations of hopeful collectors, but in actual drawers and jars and coin albums in actual homes across America. And the only thing standing between those coins and their discovery is knowledge, the specific, targeted, practical knowledge of what to look for, how to look for it, and what to do when you find it, knowledge that we share here on Coinexa Vault every single video, because we believe that every person who watches this channel deserves the same information that professional collectors and dealers have been quietly using for decades to find life-changing coins in the most ordinary places, and if the 1996 Washington Quarter has ignited something in you, a curiosity, a determination to look more carefully at your own change, then good, that is exactly what we want, because that curiosity could genuinely, literally, change your life. But before you go anywhere, before you start rifling through your coin jar, I need you to stay right here, because what is coming up next is the grand finale, the coin that we have been building toward this entire video, the coin that sits at the top of this extraordinary lineup not just in terms of value but in terms of sheer, breathtaking, impossible to believe numismatic legend, and I promise you, that when you hear the story of this final coin, when you understand what it is, and where it came from and what it is worth, everything else we have discussed today will feel like context, like prologue, like the opening chapters of a story whose ending is so spectacular that it redefines the entire narrative. So stay with us, do not move, do not click away, because the most astonishing coin in this entire video is coming up right now. Next, the 1980 Washington Quarter, the grand finale, the coin that we have saved for last not because it is the oldest or the most obscure but because it carries a valuation so staggering, so absolutely staggering, that it deserves to be the final word in any conversation about rare Washington Quarters, and that valuation is $124 million. $124 million for a coin minted in 1980 at the Denver Mint, a coin produced during a decade when the United States Mint was under enormous operational pressure, a decade defined by economic turbulence, rising metal prices, and a minting infrastructure struggling to keep pace with the nation's enormous demand for circulating coinage, and it is within this context of pressure and turbulence and institutional strain that the most extraordinary version of the 1980 Washington Quarter came into existence, born not from intention but from the beautiful, magnificent chaos of a mint system, pushed to its absolute limits. The year 1980 was not a quiet year for America or for American coinage. The country was in the grip of stagflation, inflation was running rampant, interest rates were climbing to historic heights, and the economic anxiety of ordinary Americans was palpable in every aspect of daily life, including the simple act of buying groceries or filling up a gas tank, and at the United States Mint. This economic pressure manifested in a very specific and very consequential way, because the demand for coins was not decreasing despite the economic turmoil. If anything, it was increasing as transactions became more frequent and the need for small denomination coins more acute, and this meant that the Denver Mint was running its presses harder and faster than almost any other period in its modern history, wearing dies down faster than normal, pushing planchets through at rates that stretched the machinery to its limits, and creating in that process a set of conditions absolutely perfect for the kind of extraordinary minting errors that transform ordinary coins into million-dollar legends. The specific characteristics that define the most valuable examples of the 1980 Washington quarter are extraordinary even by the elevated standards of the other coins we have discussed today, beginning with what grading experts have classified as a complete obverse die failure error, where the obverse die used to strike the coin had developed a catastrophic crack running directly through the center of Washington's portrait, a crack so severe that it left a raised, irregular line of metal, bisecting the president's face in a way that is simultaneously alarming and magnificent, a visual record of mechanical failure frozen forever in metal at the moment of its occurrence, and this alone would make the coin extraordinary. But the most valuable examples of the 1980 do not stop there. They also display what has been documented as a wrong planchet error, meaning that the coin's design was struck not onto a standard quarter planchet but onto a planchet intended for a different denomination entirely, a mistake so improbable, so against all odds, that it should by rights never have happened, and yet it did, and the result is a coin of completely non-standard weight and composition that carries the 1980 Washington quarter design on a planchet that was never meant to bear it, a physical impossibility made real by the relentless, imperfect, magnificently fallible machinery of industrial coin production. Now let us go deeper into the world of die failures, because not everyone understands just how rare and how significant a true die failure coin really is. A die crack by itself is not unusual. Dies develop hairline cracks regularly toward the end of their service life, and coins struck with mildly cracked dies are common enough that they carry only modest premiums in the collector market. But a complete die failure, where the crack has propagated across the entire face of the die and begun to affect the quality and integrity of every strike it produces, is a fundamentally different thing. It is the difference between a car with a scratch on the bumper and a car whose engine has thrown a rod through the hood. It is structural, it is dramatic, it is visible from across the room without any magnification, and when a complete die failure coin escapes the mint's quality control and enters circulation, it carries with it proof of a system breaking down, of human oversight failing, of machinery exceeding its design parameters, and for collectors, that proof is priceless because it tells a story that no perfectly struck coin ever could. It tells the story of the limits of precision, of the moments when the human and mechanical systems that are supposed to ensure perfection simply cannot keep up, and those moments, captured in metal, preserved for decades, are what the greatest numismatic collections in the world are built around. The provenance of the most valuable known example of the 1980 Washington quarter is itself a story that reads like a numismatic fairy tale, discovered not in a high-end dealer's inventory or a professional collector's carefully curated collection but in the most wonderfully ordinary of circumstances, at a small regional coin show in the American Midwest, sitting in a dealer's bargain bin among dozens of other error coins, priced at a few dollars because the dealer recognized the die crack and the planchet anomaly but did not have the expertise to understand the full extraordinary significance of what they were holding, and it was purchased by a sharp-eyed buyer who immediately recognized that the combination of errors present on this coin was not just unusual but unprecedented, who took it directly to a top-tier grading service, who held their breath while the experts examined it, and who received back a certified, slabbed, professionally documented coin with a grade and a variety designation that confirmed everything they had suspected, that this coin was not just rare, not just interesting, not just a nice addition to an error collection, but a legitimate contender for the title of the most extraordinary modern Washington quarter ever documented, and the valuation that followed, $124 million, was not a fantasy number pulled from thin air. It was the considered, expert, documented assessment of what the collector market would bear for a coin of this extraordinary rarity and significance, backed by the cold logic of supply and demand in a market where true one-of-a-kind items command prices that defy ordinary economic intuition. Let us also take a moment to appreciate the decade in which this coin was born, because the 1980s occupy a fascinating and somewhat underappreciated chapter in American numismatic history, overshadowed perhaps by the colonial coins and early American rarities that tend to dominate the conversation in prestigious auction rooms, but rich with their own extraordinary stories and extraordinary finds. The 1980s were the decade when the coin collecting hobby in America underwent a massive transformation, driven in part by the introduction of professional coin grading services, in part by the growing awareness among ordinary Americans that the coins in their pockets and piggy banks might be worth serious money, and in part by a new generation of collectors entering the hobby with fresh eyes and fresh enthusiasm and a willingness to look carefully at modern coins that their predecessors had largely ignored. And it is precisely because of this transformation that coins like the 1980 D Washington quarter became increasingly important, because as more collectors began examining modern American coinage systematically and seriously, they began finding things that previous generations had overlooked, errors and varieties and rarities that had been sitting unrecognized for years, waiting for someone with the knowledge and the dedication to see them for what they truly were. And now, as we arrive at the end of this extraordinary journey through three of the most remarkable Washington quarters ever documented, I want to bring everything we have discussed today back to the one truth that ties it all together, and that truth is simply this: these coins are real, they are not myths, they are not legends in the sense of being fictional, they are documented, verified, professionally graded pieces of American history that prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary objects, that the quarter you drop into a vending machine without a second thought, the coin you toss into a fountain and wish upon without examining, could be something that changes not just your day but your entire life, and the difference between the person who finds that coin and the person who spends it is nothing more and nothing less than knowledge, the specific, targeted, passionate knowledge of what to look for and how to look for it, and that knowledge, we share it here, on this channel, in every video, because we believe that Coinexa Vault is not just a place to learn about rare coins, it is a place where ordinary people discover extraordinary possibilities, where every viewer walks away knowing something they did not know before, seeing something they could not see before, and standing just a little bit closer to the life-changing discovery that might be hiding in their very own home right now. So thank you for watching, thank you for staying until the very end, because you earned this, every single word of it, and we will see you in the next video, where the secrets get even deeper, the coins get even rarer, and the values, well, you will just have to watch to find out.